the land that decides everything. This land does not welcome life. It tests it. Vast, dry, and seemingly endless, the terrain stretches without offering comfort or shelter. Sand, stone, and wind dominate the horizon. Every movement here has a cost. Every mistake remains exposed. Survival is not determined by strength alone, but by timing, awareness, and restraint. This is a region where resources are scarce and conditions change without warning. Rain is unpredictable. Heat builds relentlessly. Shade is limited. Water exists, but rarely where it is expected. In this environment, survival is not guaranteed by size, speed, or dominance. It is governed by adaptation. The landscape itself acts as the first filter. Only species capable of enduring prolonged thirst, extreme temperatures, and long distances can persist. Those unable to adjust disappear quietly, leaving no trace behind. There are no second chances written into this system. Two major forces shape this land. One is age. Geological time has carved dunes, plains, and rocky plateaus into a hostile but stable structure. The other is climate. High temperatures, low annual rainfall, and sudden variations create conditions where consistency is rare and survival depends on flexibility. Life here does not flourish. It endures. Animals move with purpose. They conserve energy. They avoid unnecessary conflict. Every action is measured against the cost of exposure. Movement is often slow, deliberate, and timed to avoid the most punishing hours of the day. In this environment, visibility can be both an advantage and a threat. Open terrain allows early detection of danger, but it also removes the possibility of concealment. Survival depends on reading the land correctly, understanding when to advance, when to wait, and when to retreat. Nothing in this system is random. Every pattern is the result of pressure. The land does not favor predators over prey, or the strong over the weak. It favors those that respond correctly to its conditions. Those that miscalculate, even once, are removed from the system without resistance. This is where all encounters begin, before pursuit, before conflict, before outcome. Here, the land decides who gets the chance to continue. The invisible conditions. Survival here is shaped by forces that are rarely seen but always present. Heat is not constant. It rises and falls in patterns that punish miscalculation. The hours between mid-morning and late afternoon drain energy faster than any chase. Animals that fail to account for this do not last long. Movement during the wrong window carries consequences that cannot be reversed. Water defines distance, not where animals want to go, but how far they can afford to travel. Sources appear briefly, then vanish. Dry riverbeds suggest availability that no longer exists. What remains underground is known only to those that remember or detect subtle signs changes in soil, vegetation, or scent. Thirst does not kill immediately. It weakens judgment first. Wind alters everything. It carries scent across open ground, exposing movement long before contact is possible. For prey, this means danger can arrive without warning. For predators, a shift in wind direction can erase hours of tracking in seconds. Positioning becomes critical. One wrong approach turns advantage into failure. The terrain itself enforces discipline. Loose sand slows pursuit. Rocky ground injures the careless. Open plains offer no margin for hesitation. Nothing here allows speed without risk. Night offers relief from heat, but introduces new pressure. Visibility drops. Sounds travel farther. Some species gain advantage in darkness. Others lose their ability to detect danger in time. Choosing when to rest and when to move becomes a calculation with no safe answer. Even abundance carries danger. When resources concentrate, so does competition. Waterholes become convergence points, drawing predators and prey into the same narrow space. Encounters become unavoidable. Timing decides who drinks and who waits. Waiting too long is often worse than arriving early. These conditions do not announce themselves. They accumulate. A slight delay, a misread signal, an unnecessary movement. Each one reduces the margin for survival. Before any pursuit begins, before strength or coordination matters, The environment has already shaped the outcome. Some will enter the next phase prepared. Others will already be compromised without realizing it. This is not chance. It is pressure. And pressure never favors hesitation. The first to endure. The first species to emerge is not defined by speed or aggression. It is defined by restraint. In this environment, survival favors those that move only when necessary. Large bodies retain heat. Small mistakes become costly. This species has learned to reduce exposure rather than challenge it. Its movements are slow, deliberate, and spaced over long distances. Energy is conserved because energy cannot be replaced easily. Food is sparse. Water is uncertain. Every step is measured against what may be lost, not what may be gained. Physically, it is built for endurance. Strong limbs support long travel across uneven ground. A digestive system capable of extracting value from dry, nutrient-poor vegetation reduces dependency on scarce resources. Water intake is minimized through efficiency, not abundance. Heat does not stop it. It adapts to it. Body temperature rises beyond what would incapacitate other species, reducing the need for constant cooling. This adjustment lowers water loss and allows survival during extended dry periods. The cost is slower movement, but speed is not the objective here. Threats exist, but confrontation is avoided whenever possible. Visibility across open terrain allows early detection. Distance becomes protection. When danger appears, the response is not panic. It is positioning, facing outward, maintaining space, preventing encirclement. Defense is reserved for the final moment, not to dominate, but to end the encounter quickly. Social structure reinforces survival. Small groups move together, not for strength in numbers, but for awareness. Multiple sets of senses reduce blind spots. When one individual detects change, the group adjusts immediately. No signal is ignored. Travel patterns follow memory rather than instinct alone. Routes shift seasonally. Areas that once provided relief may no longer exist. Adaptation here is continuous, not inherited. This species does not control the land. It negotiates with it. Each day it remains is not a victory. It is a temporary allowance. The land has not rejected it yet. That is all survival ever means. When size becomes a risk, the next species enters the system with an advantage that also carries weight. Height expands reach. Mass creates presence. But in this land, visibility is never neutral. This species relies on access rather than concealment. Its survival depends on reaching resources that others cannot. Elevated feeding zones reduce competition, but they also demand constant exposure. There is no way to feed without being seen. Movement is cautious. Stopping is frequent. Its body is designed for distance, not acceleration. Long limbs cover ground efficiently, but turning takes time. Reaction speed is limited by structure. When danger appears, escape is possible, but only if detected early. Detection becomes the primary defense. Eyes scan wide angles. Ears track subtle changes. The moment attention drops, vulnerability increases. Predators do not need surprise. They need opportunity. Drinking is the most dangerous act. Lowering the body disrupts balance. Field of vision narrows. Recovery takes time. Every visit to water is calculated against risk. Waiting too long weakens the body. Approaching too early exposes it to ambush. There is no safe choice, only less dangerous ones. Social behavior reduces isolation. Groups move together, not to confront threats, but to multiply awareness. Younger and weaker individuals remain central. Stronger members position themselves outward. The formation shifts constantly, responding to terrain and visibility. Defense exists, but it is situational. Powerful strikes can disable an attacker, but only if timing is precise. A missed response creates imbalance. Imbalance invites escalation. Seasonal pressure intensifies everything. During dry periods, feeding routes extend, travel increases, fatigue accumulates. With each additional kilometer, reaction time slows. Survival here is not about dominance. It is about avoiding the moment when dominance is tested. This species continues not because it controls the system, but because it has learned where the limits are. It advances until pressure rises, then withdraws before collapse. The land allows it space, not protection, and that space is shrinking. The advantage of coordination. Here, survival is no longer individual. This group does not rely on size or singular strength. Its advantage lies in coordination. Movement is shared. Decisions are collective. Success depends on timing rather than force. Each member plays a role. Some track, others pressure. One mistake does not end the hunt, but repeated errors weaken the entire group. Communication is constant, often subtle, adjusted through posture, direction, and spacing. Speed is not absolute. Endurance is. Rather than immediate confrontation, pursuit stretches the system. Targets are tested over distance. Weakness reveals itself, gradually slower recovery, uneven movement. Hesitation. The group does not rush the outcome. It allows fatigue to narrow options. Terrain becomes a tool. Open ground limits escape routes. Loose soil reduces traction. Heat accelerates exhaustion. The hunt adapts continuously. Failure is expected. Not every attempt succeeds. When conditions are unfavorable, the group withdraws without resistance. Energy is preserved for the next opportunity. Persistence replaces aggression. Once engagement begins, coordination tightens. Individuals position themselves to block retreat rather than initiate contact. Pressure increases incrementally. The objective is imbalance. When balance breaks, the system collapses quickly. Competition remains constant. Other predators observe. Timing determines whether a kill can be claimed or lost. Speed after the capture becomes as critical as the hunt itself. Consumption begins immediately. Delay invites interference. This strategy has limits. Injury to one member reduces overall effectiveness. Loss accumulates faster than recovery. The system depends on cohesion. When cohesion fractures, survival probability declines sharply. The group thrives not because it dominates the land, but because it exploits moments when the land weakens others first. Coordination does not guarantee success. It reduces risk. And in this environment, reducing risk is often the only advantage available. Power under constraint. Near the top of the system, strength becomes visible, and visibility attracts pressure. This predator does not depend on endurance alone or group coordination. Its presence is immediate. Size creates authority. Power shortens encounters. When it commits, the outcome is decided quickly. But power carries cost. Mass increases energy demand. Heat retention limits activity windows. Movement must be calculated to avoid exhaustion. Unlike smaller hunters, this predator cannot afford repeated failure. Each attempt draws from reserves that recover slowly. Territory defines survival. Control reduces competition. Loss invites conflict. The land does not offer consistent borders. Boundaries shift with resources. When prey disperses, the predator must follow. Distance expands. Energy expenditure rises. Dominance weakens without direct confrontation. Hunting strategy favors efficiency. Ambush replaces pursuit. Timing replaces speed. Success depends on patience, waiting for moments when others are already compromised by heat, fatigue, or injury. Confrontation with equals is avoided unless unavoidable. Injury here is not temporary. Damage accumulates. A single compromised limb alters future outcomes permanently. Despite its position, this predator is not immune to pressure. Scarcity narrows options. Competition from coordinated groups increases interference. Kills are challenged. Meals are interrupted. Control becomes negotiation rather than enforcement. Rest becomes essential. Activity compresses into narrow windows. Shade and stillness preserve strength. Movement without purpose is eliminated. The system does not reward dominance indefinitely. It tests it repeatedly. This predator remains near the top not because it wins every encounter, but because it avoids the ones that threaten its stability. Survival here is no longer about expansion. It is about maintenance. Power persists only while conditions allow it, and conditions never remain fixed. Pressure beyond the system. The balance here was never stable, but it was predictable. That predictability is eroding. Rain arrives later, or not at all. Seasonal markers lose reliability. Dry periods extend beyond what memory can compensate for. Routes that once sustained movement now lead to absence. The land no longer responds within expected limits. Water sources shrink, then disappear. Vegetation thins. Distances between viable zones expand. Every species adjusts, but not at the same pace. As resources compress, overlap increases. Prey congregates where relief remains. Predators follow. Encounters become more frequent, but not more efficient. Competition intensifies. Interference replaces isolation. Risk accumulates faster than recovery. Human presence introduces a different form of pressure. Movement corridors are disrupted. Noise alters behavior patterns. Artificial barriers redirect travel into narrower paths. Avoidance consumes energy. Adaptation requires detours that were never part of the system. Some threats do not announce themselves. They do not hunt. They remove. Selective loss reshapes populations unevenly. The strongest are not always spared. Absence appears first in patterns, then in numbers. Recovery, if possible, moves slowly. The system responds without judgment. It recalibrates. Predators expand ranges, prey alters timing, social structures compress or fragment. What once worked reliably becomes provisional. Survival depends increasingly on flexibility rather than specialization. No species escapes this shift. Not the cautious, not the coordinated, not the powerful. Pressure no longer arrives only from heat, thirst, or competition. It arrives from disruption. From unpredictability layered onto an already narrow margin, the land still decides outcomes. But the parameters are changing, and change favors nothing permanently. Forced adaptation. Stability does not return on its own. It is imposed by limitation. As pressure increases, the system narrows. Movement reduces. Territories contract. Encounters become selective rather than constant. Survival shifts from expansion to control. Some species adjust by retreating, others by compressing their range. A few disappear entirely. Adaptation here is no longer gradual. It is forced. Timing changes first. Activity windows shorten. Travel occurs earlier or later to avoid exposure. Feeding becomes opportunistic rather than routine. Rest replaces movement whenever possible. Energy conservation becomes the primary strategy. Social structures respond next. Groups tighten. Roles become more defined. Non-essential members are pushed outward, increasing risk at the edges to protect the core. Cooperation intensifies, not by choice, but necessity. Predators alter expectations. Failed attempts are abandoned sooner. Targets are chosen more carefully. Engagement depends less on opportunity and more on probability. Risk tolerance drops. Prey responds with avoidance rather than escape. Routes become indirect. Familiar areas are abandoned if pressure accumulates. Memory is rewritten rapidly. Sometimes within a single season, nothing returns to what it was. Intervention slows collapse, but does not reverse pressure. Artificial stability holds patterns in place temporarily, creating pockets where survival remains possible. Outside these zones, the system continues to thin. Adaptation does not guarantee continuation. It delays removal. Those that remain are not stronger than before. They are simply aligned with the new constraints. Survival becomes conditional, dependent on variables that may shift again without warning. The system stabilizes briefly, not because balance is restored, but because loss has already occurred. The law that remains. Nothing here reaches a final state, only a temporary one. The land does not preserve outcomes, it permits them for a time. What survives today does so under conditions that may not exist tomorrow. Stability, when it appears, is the result of limitation, not balance. Those that remain are not rewarded, they are tolerated. Every pattern observed here has occurred before, in different forms, under different pressures. The order shifts, the roles rotate, the process stays the same. Survival is never secured by success alone. It depends on continued alignment with conditions that are never fixed. Strength fades without opportunity. Coordination fails when numbers thin. Endurance collapses when distance expands. No strategy lasts indefinitely. The system does not adapt to individuals. Individuals adapt to the system until they no longer can. Removal is quiet. Absence becomes noticeable only after it has settled into the landscape. There is no warning phase, no final adjustment. The land does not escalate, it proceeds. What remains visible is not dominance or resilience or design. It is response, movement in the correct window, withdrawal at the correct moment, presence where pressure is lowest. This is not a story of triumph. It is a record of continuation. The law does not change. Only the participants do. And when they are gone, the land will wait. After the movement stops. When the movement fades, the land does not react. It remains. Tracks disappear under wind and dust. Heat resets the surface. What happened here leaves no permanent mark. The system does not record effort, intention, or outcome. Only absence. Life continues elsewhere. Under slightly different conditions, with slightly different margins. What survived this cycle does so quietly, without recognition. What failed is not remembered. Nothing waits to be restored. The patterns observed do not belong to this place alone. They repeat wherever pressure exceeds tolerance, where resources narrow, where timing decides more than strength. The same responses emerge, the same limits apply. Adaptation delays removal. It does not prevent it. This land does not punish. It does not reward. It applies conditions. Those conditions decide. When the next shift arrives, and it will, the process begins again. New participants enter. Old strategies are tested. Some align. Others fall out of sequence. The law remains unchanged. It does not announce itself. It does not explain. It operates silently. After the movement stops, when the movement fades, the land does not react. It remains. Tracks disappear under wind and dust. Heat resets the surface. What happened here leaves no permanent mark. The system does not record effort, intention, or outcome. Only absence. Life continues elsewhere, under slightly different conditions, with slightly different margins. What survived this cycle does so quietly, without recognition. What failed is not remembered. Nothing waits to be restored. The patterns observed do not belong to this place alone. They repeat wherever pressure exceeds tolerance, where resources narrow, where timing decides more than strength. The same responses emerge. The same limits apply. Adaptation delays removal. It does not prevent it. This land does not punish. It does not reward. It applies conditions. Those conditions decide. When the next shift arrives, and it will, the process begins again. New participants enter. Old strategies are tested. Some align. Others fall out of sequence. The law remains unchanged. It does not announce itself. It does not explain. It operates silently.